If you are carrying debt right now and trying to figure out whether to pay it off or start investing, I want you to know something first. You are not behind, you are not doing it wrong, you are asking exactly the right question at exactly the right time. Because most people never ask it. They either throw every dollar of debt and ignore investing entirely, or they invest and make minimum payments and hope the debt eventually goes away. Both approaches cost them dearly. Here is something that might surprise you. Sometimes the math actually says you should be investing even while you are carrying debt. Not always, but more often than people realize. Today, I'm going to give you a clear framework for answering this question based on your situation, covering credit cards, student loans, auto loans, and mortgages, so you can stop guessing and start making intentional decisions. I'm Ken Erdman, financial planner and founder of Erdman Financial Group in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Let's get into it. Here is why this question trips people up. It is not really a math question. It is an emotional one. Debt feels urgent. It feels like a weight. It feels like something you should get rid of before you do anything else. That feeling is completely understandable. Debt is a real obligation, and the psychological burden of carrying it is real too. Investing, on the other hand, sometimes feels optional. It feels like something you do after the important things are handled, after the debt is gone, after life settles down, or after you feel ready. But here's the problem with that framing. Waiting to invest until debt is completely gone can cost you years of compounding that you can never get back. And in some cases, the interest rate on your debt is low enough that the math heavily favors investing alongside it rather than instead of it. The key is understanding which situation you are in, and that comes down to one number more than anything else, and that's the interest rate on your debt. That single number tells you more about what to do than almost anything else. Here's a simple principle behind that framework. If your debt carries a high interest rate, generally anything above 6 or 7%, paying it off aggressively is almost always the right financial move. Because every dollar you put toward that debt saves you the interest you are no longer paying. Eliminating a 20% credit card balance is the equivalency of a risk-free 20% on that money. That is hard to beat anywhere in the investment world. If your debt, however, carries a low interest rate, generally below 4 or 5%, the math often favors investing alongside it rather than aggressively paying it down. And that's because the long-term historical average returns on a diversified investment portfolio have tended to exceed that rate of interest over time, though past performance is never a guarantee of future rates, of course. If your debt sits somewhere in the middle, somewhere between 4 and 7%, the decision becomes more nuanced and personal factors start to matter more than pure math. Things like your risk tolerance, your emotional relationship with debt, your timeline, and your overall financial picture all play a role. But before any of that, there is one move that almost always comes first, regardless of what kind of debt you have, and that's to capture your employer match. If your employer offers a 401k match and you are not contributing enough to get the full match, that is your first priority. A 50 or 100% match is an immediate boost to your contribution that no debt strategy can ever touch. Never leave that on the table regardless of your debt situation. I'm going to pivot a little bit here, and we're going to walk through 4 of the most common types of debt and how to think about each one of them. First up, we have credit card debt. This one is much more straightforward. Credit card interest rates are almost always high, typically somewhere between 18 and 28% or more in the current environment. Eliminating 20% interest on a credit card balance is the equivalent of a risk-free 20% on that money. Very few investment strategies can consistently match that. If you are carrying a credit card balance, paying it off aggressively is almost always the highest return move available to you. Full stop. That one exception is capturing your employer match first, but beyond that, credit card debt gets attacked before anything else. Think about it this way. Picture a prospect who called the other day. They had roughly $15,000 in credit card debt at 22% interest while putting $500 a month into investments. The math was working against them in a significant way. So redirecting that $500 towards the credit card balance would have saved them thousands in interest and freed up cash flow faster than the investment returns could offset the cost. Loan number 2 we're going to talk about is student loans. This is where it gets more nuanced because student loan interest rates vary enormously. Federal loans taken out in recent years may carry rates anywhere from 5 to 8% or higher depending on the loan type. Private loans can be significantly higher yet. For higher rate student loans above 6 or 7%, aggressively paying off makes strong mathematical sense. However, for lower rate federal loans below 4 or 5%, the case for investing alongside them rather than prioritizing payoff becomes much stronger. For physicians specifically, income-driven repayment plans and public service loan forgiveness may change the calculus completely. If you are on a forgiveness track, aggressively paying down federal loans may actually work against you. This is one of the areas where individual circumstances matter most, and a blanket rule serves almost nobody well. Know your rates, know your repayment options, and make the decision based on your specific situation rather than a general rule of thumb. Next up is car loans. Car loans in the current environment have ranged widely, from very low promotional rates to 6 or 7 or even 8% depending on where you financed and your credit profile. Apply the same interest rate principle here. A low car loan rate, say 3%, is almost certainly better to carry and invest alongside rather than pay off aggressively. A higher rate on your car loan at 7 or even 8% deserves more aggressive attention. One important distinction with car loans is, unlike a mortgage, a car is a depreciating asset. There is no equity building here, so the faster you eliminate the payment and redirects that cash flow toward wealth building, the better, regardless of the rate. Last up is mortgage debt. Mortgages are typically the lowest interest rate debt most people carry, and they come with tax consideration as well for those who itemize deductions. For most people in most situations, investing rather than aggressively paying down a mortgage makes strong mathematical sense. When you are carrying a 3 or 4% mortgage, the math often points toward investing alongside it rather than aggressively paying it down. That said, individual circumstances always matter, and there is no one-size-fits-all answer here. The psychological piece of owning your home outright is real and worth factoring in as well. If eliminating your mortgage payment would meaningfully reduce your stress and improve your quality of life, that has value that does not show up in a spreadsheet. Personal finance is personal for a reason. The nuance on mortgages is also rate dependent. Someone who locked in a 3% rate during a low rate environment is in a very different situation than someone carrying a 7% mortgage today. Know your number and make the decision accordingly. So let me give you a simple order of operations that applies to most situations. First is capturing your employer match. Always, no exceptions. Second is eliminating high interest debt aggressively. Credit cards and any other debt above 6 or 7%. The savings on eliminating that interest is too significant to pass up. Third is building your emergency fund. 3 to 6 months of expenses in cash. Without this foundation, everything else in your financial plan is fragile. Fourth, for lower interest debt, consider investing alongside it rather than aggressively paying it down. Mortgages, low-rate student loans, low-rate car loans, let the math work in your favor. Fifth is increasing investing contributions as debt decreases and cash flow improves. Each debt you eliminate frees up more to put toward building wealth. This is not a one-size-fits-all answer. Everybody has different interest rates, different income levels, different timelines, your risk tolerance, and even your emotional relationship with debt all matter. But this framework gives you a starting point that is grounded in math rather than the feeling. The debt versus investing conversation rarely has a single answer. It has a right answer for your specific situation, such as your rates, your goals, your timeline, and your overall financial picture. If you want to run the numbers on your specific situation, I have a free debt payoff calculator on our website, and the link is in the description below. Plug in your balances and rates and see exactly where you stand. That is where working with someone comes in. Whether that is a full financial plan or simply sitting down and mapping out the order of operations that makes most sense for where you are right now, giving that clarity is worth far more than simply guessing. You do not need to have it all figured out before we talk. In fact, most people do not. You just need to be serious about getting there. All right, so let me wrap this up. Should you pay off debt or invest first? The honest answer is it depends. It depends on specific things that you can actually know and act on. Always capture the employer match first. Attack your high interest debt aggressively, build your emergency fund, and for lower interest rate debt, let the math guide you toward investing alongside it rather than instead of it. Debt feels urgent. Investing sometimes feels optional. But the cost of waiting to invest until every dollar of debt is gone is often far higher than most people ever calculate. Know your rates, know your options. Make intentional decisions based on your actual situation rather than a general rule or a feeling. If any of this resonated, if you are trying to figure out the right order of operations for your specific situation when it comes to your relation with debt, feel free to reach out. I work with people at every stage of the financial journey, and I am always happy to have that conversation. Link to schedule a call is in the description. If this was helpful, subscribe. I put out new videos every week with no fluff, just real planning conversation for people who are serious about building something. I'll see you in the next one.